my time at Sloan was before ChatGPT existed, but I think of my classmates as the early version of that, where, I was interviewing for during the course semester for my summer internship at various pharma companies, and I didn't even know what some of the acronyms and ways that they solve problems were. Versus I had colleagues who had been working in life sciences consulting who had come from these companies, and I could just put in the chat, hey, what does market access actually mean? Or how would you think about this problem? Or does anyone know of any other drugs that have had to launch in the last 5 years in a, accelerated approval framework? And I could just get really quick answers from my classmates. And everyone was not only willing to just give the data, but also sit down, talk to me, walk me through it, help me prepare for these interviews in a way that, got me upskilled really fast.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Terrell Williams, and I serve as one of the associate directors here at MIT Sloan. And I want to welcome you to Thursdays with Terrell. Today's session is going to focus on the power of alumni engagement. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and pass it over to my first guest for the evening, Greg, and I'll have Greg introduce himself, a little bit about his role and how long he's been here at MIT Sloan.
Great. Thank you so much, Terrell. My name is Greg Batchelor. I'm the Interim Director of Strategic Alumni Engagement here at MIT Sloan in the Office of External Relations. So I've been at Sloan since 2018, though I started my career at MIT in the Central MIT Alumni Association, started in 2011. So the time flies, but I'm thrilled to be here and to have my home here at Sloan. So happy to be with everyone today.
So prior to MIT Sloan, I was working in the biotech space, specifically in regulatory affairs. That's the group that interacts between pharmaceutical companies and the global regulators. I had spent about 10 to 15 years doing that. And prior to that, I'm a pharmacist by training. And I decided to come to Sloan because I wanted to get a better understanding of strategy and finance around biotech and early startups within the life sciences space. I graduated in 2024 from the Sloan Fellows MBA program. Transformative experience, spending the year at Sloan, picked up skills that I didn't think that I didn't think was going to be offered, such as skills around leadership, and it was a thing that I highly recommend and completely transformed my life.
Thank you, Lawrence. Then I will pass it over to Marissa.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. My name is Marissa Constadt. Prior to Sloan, I worked in academic medical health in research programs and clinical research and global health. And I came to Sloan to pivot into industry. And since I graduated in 2021 from the full-time MBA program, I've been at Vertex Pharmaceuticals in the global pricing and market access strategy function. And for everyone's awareness, I live here in Boston, and I'm also a board member on the Sloan Boston Alumni Association, in charge of organizing recent alumni events and alumni engagement. So excited to talk to you all today.
And DQ, I'll pass it to you to wrap us up.
Hey there, my name's Dave Kwan. I just go by DQ. Can everyone hear me well? Okay. So prior to Sloan, I went to undergrad at UCSB, where I got a degree in electrical engineering. I was there, went to the military for 4 years as an engineering officer, left out, served as a project manager with Motorola Solutions, where at that point I decided to get my MBA for product management and went to Sloan. Afterwards, ended up going to currently at Microsoft, where I work as an AI product manager.
Thank you all for sharing. So, Greg, I want to pass it back over to you for our first question for a moderated session. Can you share an overview of the Office of External Relations? This may be the first time that our audience is hearing this term. So, can you share its role in supporting the MIT Sloan's mission and kind of your roles and responsibilities within the office?
Yeah, thank you. So first, the Office of External Relations kind of mission statement is to engage students, alumni, and friends with one another and MIT Sloan to really inspire the investment of time, expertise, and financial support. So I like to boil it down as it's about community and building the network, and it's also about philanthropy. So I work on the strategic alumni engagement team. So we're really focusing on the network and volunteerism. So we work with alumni all over the world who want to support the school and stay engaged. So we do that through events, through volunteerism. Some of our big events are marquee annual events like Reunion, where we're bringing alumni back to campus and reconnecting with their classmates. And we really put a big focus on intellectual programming and faculty events. We also support regional club volunteers, so I'm thrilled Marissa's here to talk about the Sloan Boston Alumni Association. We also work with other volunteer groups around the world. And then, of course, Terrell, you're with admissions, but we support the admissions team. We support other departments at Sloan, like the Career Development Office and our Action Learning team. So really keeping alumni connected to all of the other departments across the school as well and fueling the ecosystem here. So I mentioned too philanthropy. We are a fundraising organization. MIT Sloan wouldn't exist without the generosity of our alumni who give back not only their time, but also their financial support. So that's for things like fellowship, the Sloan Annual Fund, and also for faculty research. So it's engagement, it's volunteerism, it's philanthropy, it's all connected. So it's really the whole ecosystem there.
Thank you for sharing, Greg. I'll stay with you for a moment. So, could you share some additional trends that you're noticing in how alumni prefer to stay connected to the school?
Sure, sure. This may not be a trend necessarily, but I think one of the things that's a true differentiator for MIT Sloan, our alumni love to be together. We have really smart people who want to do big things, and when you bring them together, the magic happens. So, I think prioritizing that intellectual content, you'll see that in all of our events. You'll see it at Reunion, that feeling of being back in the classroom and always learning together. I think our alumni really want to be on the cutting edge of new research. So, not a trend, but definitely something that's, a differentiator for our Sloan alumni community. The learning doesn't stop.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Greg. So now I want to pass over to our alumni guests here as well. So just, I know we touched on this during your introductions, but can you all kind of share some additional insight on, what led you to ultimately enroll at MIT Sloan?
I can kick us off. For me, I found that there were a lot of different reasons people were going to business school, and for me, I was pivoting into industry for the first time. I never worked for a public corporation, and I really wanted the intellectual chops to really stand up to what I'd done. I'd studied communication in undergrad, but I didn't have the technical background that a lot of folks have coming into Sloan. And so I really wanted to double down on the quantitative skills. And I felt like Sloan was a unique way to both do that in school and to leverage the reputation of MIT further for my employers in the future.
DQ?
Yeah, I think for me it's a two-part. I think the first part is for the MIT, and the second part is for the people. Initially, when I knew I wanted to get an MBA, and as I started to look at different programs, I was like, hey, I really want a quantitative program that can dive down and really get into the weeds of the technical aspects of everything. And so as I went through the list, MIT definitely stuck out as one of those who had like great tech placement. But what really solidified it for me is the more I interacted with different schools, the mantra was like Sloanies helping Sloanies is really true. There are so many kind, nice people I've met who had amazing backgrounds. And from that network, I was like, this is definitely the spot for me.
Yeah, I think the main reason that I just chose MIT Sloan was, you know, twofold. That I think the first thing was that coming from a true technical background as a pharmacist by training, I really value the technical approach to management that MIT Sloan had within the course and how they wanted to approach just teaching management in general. I wanted to be at MIT because of the connection that they had to the biotech space in general. So I think, the overall MIT ecosystem, there's a lot of great labs and a lot of great professors who help launch a number of pharmaceutical companies. And then I think the thing that really stood out to me a lot was the principal leadership aspect, the values associated with being a Sloaney. I think the intention associated with how we interact with the overall business community I valued a lot, and I wanted to continue to kind of live that in my next role.
Thank you all for sharing. DQ, you touched on something that I was going to ask anyway, but I'm happy you shared the Sloanies helping Sloanies ethos that we have here. So, could you all share some examples of what that looks like before someone's time at Sloan, during someone's time at Sloan, or even after they graduate from Sloan? DQ, you can go ahead and kick us off.
Yeah, I can definitely start with that. So I'll start with the before Sloan. So before Sloan, one thing, like I said, the networking community really drove me to apply and accept here. But there were a handful of people who, as I reached out, like, hey, I'm applying to this school. Can you help me out? There's this program. It's called Plug now, PLUG. It's a Sloan club. But essentially, there are current students who would go through and actually help and assist people getting into the school. So hey, let me look at your applications, help you out. Those primarily for um, marginalized communities. And so for me being Afro Latino, I really love that I felt a sense of community there even before getting to Sloan. And after Sloan, it's actually funny. The reason I'm actually at Microsoft is because of another Sloanie. Um, she was also a 24 grad, and I think when I was applying for work, I was like, "Hey, where's the best place I can apply to?" So many Sloanies gave me referrals. They like connected me with their hiring managers. They really set me up, and so honestly, we're today without other Sloanies, which is once again one of the biggest reasons I chose the school.
Yeah, I mean, I went to add also, like, I came to Sloan without any business acumen or background. So when I stepped into the classroom, I think, there's finance, there was um, courses that I hadn't, DMD, there's courses that I hadn't had a lot of experience with that we informally rallied together to kind of dive into those courses, from strategy courses to finance courses, to kind of, help each other get through the classwork. And I think that's really one of the strong facets about the people that end up coming to Sloan, right? Is that they truly believe in this Sloanies helping Sloanies. And I realized earlier I didn't mention that I launched a venture fund, and that's what I'm doing after Sloan. We invest in the biotech space. But one of the ways I was able to launch that fund was because I partnered with one of my Sloaney classmates to launch the venture fund. And we kind of came together, and he provided a lot of assistance. He's done venture work before, or VC work before, and we partnered together and really was able to drive the launch of the venture fund. So yeah, it just speaks to like the type of people that Sloan accepts, and the desire to kind of support each other through these endeavors.
Maybe one thing I'll add is how much I learned from my fellow Sloanies, both in school and since then. There's this was before my time at Sloan was before ChatGPT existed, but I think of my classmates as the early version of that, where, I was interviewing for during the course semester for my summer internship at various pharma companies, and I didn't even know what some of the acronyms and ways that they solve problems were, versus I had colleagues who had been working in life sciences consulting who had come from these companies, and I could just put in the chat, hey, what does market access actually mean? Or how would you think about this problem? Or does anyone know of any other drugs that have had to launch in the last 5 years in a, accelerated approval framework? And I could just get really quick answers from my classmates. And everyone was not only willing to just give the data, but also sit down, talk to me, walk me through it, help me prepare for these interviews in a way that, got me upskilled really fast. And I continued to leverage my peers, before graduating, through classes, through taking an econ class or a data class that was brand new material to me, but also in my first couple of years of the job, when I had colleagues who had spent a decade working in life sciences consulting and had this whole breadth of knowledge that they could point me in the right direction really quickly so that I could be better and more effective in my job as well.
Thank you all for sharing. Greg, I want to start with you on this next question. You touched on this earlier about your collaboration with the admissions office. So, could you share how alumni interacts with newly admitted students before the program begins, and how Sloan encourages those early connections to shape those student outcomes?
Yeah, thanks, Terrell, and a big kudos to your team for helping facilitate those connections. But I think specifically about our Sloan Alumni Board. So a key volunteer group for us who are active and willing to do admit calling. So, again, your team provides the structure and the outreach opportunity, but really to have alumni who are willing to call admitted students and share their experience and kind of put their minds at ease, right? To be hearing from folks who have walked through the doors of MIT Sloan before you and get those firsthand experiences, I think is incredibly invaluable. And our alumni are always willing to make those calls and make those connections. So that, of course, comes to mind first for me, and appreciate the partnership with admissions on that.
Awesome. I know we have some newly admitted students on our call, so I'm pretty sure they, had those contacts from our alumni and as well as some current students as well to kind of talk about the experience here, kind of help them with their transition. Passing it back to the alumni panel, along those same lines from the alumni perspective, how can incoming students best take advantage of the Sloan experience inside and outside of the classroom?
Yeah, I would say one of the things that um, was recommended to do while I was at Sloan is to have these informational interviews, right? And I think a lot of the Sloan alumni is is always open to having these conversations with current Sloan students, and you can leverage LinkedIn or you can leverage the professors to connect you with the alumni. And it's I would say to start with exploration conversations with the alumni space. So these informational interviews, you go in trying to learn and understand exactly what people are doing right now, what was their experience, how did they go from Sloan to their current role, and from the majority of my experience and also my other classmates, MIT Sloan alumni is they really take that Sloanies helping Sloanies not just at Sloan, but they take it post Sloan into the alumni space also.
I think another underutilized resource at Sloan is the faculty. One of the reasons that I ended up choosing Sloan was one of the faculty members was doing research on how to apply financial models of diversification and investing and hedge fund management to cancer research, and how some of those similar concepts could, not only create sustainable biotechnology companies, but have better results from the scientific standpoint. And it was so fascinating to me. And obviously, I immediately wanted to take this professor's class. But on top of that, I was intimidated to ask for his one-on-one time, but he was willing to give it with, open arms, for office hours, for having lunch occasionally, talking about my career choices, content in his class I was interested in. And a few of us actually ended up becoming fairly close with these similar interests. And I know one of my friends ended up writing a paper with him that year. These aren't things that you typically do as an MBA student, but if it's something that you're interested in and there's a faculty member studying it, they're so willing to give you their time. And that has gone on as alumni as well. I still meet with that small group of students, and we have like quarterly or so, once or twice a year, maybe through the years, we have dinner together. I work with some of these faculty members as an alumni member to do alumni lectures, and yeah, they're so willing to give their time if you're interested in coming to them with kind of real career questions and ideas.
But I found it's actually the infinite connection of things specifically for MIT students and alumni where you can go and there's so many different variables we categorize like, hey, what year did someone graduate? What industry did they graduate in? What role are they doing? When I was recruiting, this was like a huge help for like just tapping into different people and figuring out like, hey, where can I best like be connected? Great resource that I feel like is underutilized.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. We had a little bit of trouble hearing you at that last part, but I'll let you start this next question as it pertains to your connection to the community post graduation. So I know you're part of the Sloan Affinity Group alumni, serving as one of the co-presidents. So could you share what strategies have helped you build lasting relationships within the alumni community?
So some things that I do, one from a social aspect is there's different groups. One, there's the Self Five group, where every last 5 years, depending on your area, if you're in SF, if you're in LA, you could definitely get tapped into that group, and they have events all the time going on where you can connect with others. Um, Also, like my class, we have a group chat. We're like, hey, everyone from Boston, from the class of 2024, you can hang out, get together, you can do different aspects. Um, so I think those are some really good ways I stay connected. But from the, I guess, more of a development side, so I joined Saga. It's a Sloan Affinity alumni group from affinity clubs. So if you're part of a ABC, the African Business Club, BBSA, the Black Business Student Association, or HBC, Hispanic Business Club, you're able to join this and be connected with those from similar backgrounds. And we do a lot of effort, help with current students, making sure they feel like they have the resources necessary. We engage with alumni, sharing like their specific graduation events, and they're aware of it. So those are some ways that I stay active.
Thanks. And Marissa, I'll pass it over to you as well. You talked about your engagement with the Sloan Boston Alumni Association. So you can talk about ways that you've been able to stay connected post graduation and some of the maybe initiatives that you have led.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've worked really closely with Greg and his team with the OER. They have a group called Sloan 5, which is really focused on the most 5 recent years of alumni, and they provide us with resources, swag, funding, everything we need, as long as, we can put on an activity and invite everyone to join us. And what I've found over the last 5 years since I've graduated is that Sloanies really want to get together, as Greg touched on. They just often, people are willing to raise their hand and help or show up for an event, but they might not have the bandwidth to kind of own it and put it on to begin with, or it's a little intimidating to think, what if I put in all this effort and people don't show up? And so that's something I've been able to do, both from the board perspective and also just as an alumni member. So I've organized maybe 10 or so events since I graduated, ranging from happy hours in the Boston area and just trying to keep things both on the weeknights right after work, or some things people prefer the weekends where they can bring their families. And then also giving people something to rally around, whether we have a faculty lecture or, a new book being published and faculty will come in to sign their book and talk about it, or a holiday party, all the different themes. And I think one thing that's really helped me do that is by keeping up with these WhatsApp groups and the chats and really finding out, what do people want? Do they just want a place to meet and get together and get their own drinks, or do they want something a little more formal to dress up and go dancing and have a holiday party? And so we can provide a little bit of everything, and constantly, as you'll learn in course semester, seeking feedback and acting on that feedback has been a really great way to stay engaged and to give the community kind of different reasons to get together, and it helps us meet other alumni who are choosing to stay in our same region.
Thank you both for sharing. Greg, I want to come back to you because I know we're getting towards the end of the year, but in the month of January, we do have a lot of upcoming initiatives. So, what are some initiatives that you're most excited about as we're going into this next year?
Yeah, thanks. The spring, of course, is a super busy time at MIT Sloan, but I think for our office and our team, we get really excited about thinking about our graduating students who are about to enter the alumni community. And so we put a lot of effort into that transition and how we talk to students about the opportunities to stay connected and engaged. So we do a big alumni opportunities fair to make those opportunities visible for students, and recruiting for volunteer roles. But we also do a Sloanies Helping Sloanies spring event every year that is really around enabling career conversations. So I want to emphasize, this isn't transactional, like how to get a job, but it's really bringing students and alumni together to talk about their career journeys, and to build that network and that supportive community where folks can share best practices and tips and how they've navigated their lives and their careers post MIT Sloan. So that happens every spring in partnership with a number of groups and offices here on campus. So we're excited for that as well.
Awesome. So I'll have one final question before we transition to the open Q&A. This question is for all panelists here. So this is actually a question that we got on the registration form that I wanted to make sure I asked. So engaging with alumni is always scary as a prospective student. So, what are some of the ways to ease that introduction or connection process for people trying to reach out to alumni as they're trying to figure out if Sloan is going to be a good place for them for the next 2 or maybe even 3 years, depending on what programs they're going into?
I would recommend always to start with alumni that is in either in a space that you're currently in or in a space that you're looking to get into. Um, I think alumni is always ready to have the conversation around the work that they're doing. And I think it's a great way to initiate that first initial conversation. And I also think that and I think as you're looking to potentially apply to MIT Sloan, you should also look at the different types of activities and programs that are offered at Sloan and find out if an alumni has participated in those activities previously. And those things will help you connect with those individuals also on the thing that is most interesting to you. I think Sloan has the healthcare conference, the African Business Student Conference. They have the sports conference, and there's just a number of conferences that you can attend, and a lot of alumni have either supported those conferences or go to those conferences. Those are other ways to kind of make those connections with the alumni.
I think one other simple thing is just to be really flexible. Excuse me. Is to be really flexible in your timing. And now we have the option. People are really used to, a phone call, a Zoom, offer to get them coffee at the office, meet them somewhere that's convenient for them. I think, people are always happy to talk about themselves and their journey as long as you have really specific questions and asks as to like what you're trying to dig into. So keeping that in mind and being as flexible as you can on that to be respectful of their time is also really helpful.
Yeah, I have nothing more to add to that. I think that was pretty spot on overall.
Awesome. So now I'll leave the remaining time for our open Q&A. There are almost a dozen plus questions in here, so I want to make sure that we get to most, if not all of the questions here. So I'll start off one. This is one looks like it's targeted towards Greg. So for international students planning to build ventures or return to emerging markets, how does the alumni networks continue to play a role post-graduation?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing I want to emphasize, so we are based here at MIT Sloan, and we have MIT Sloan alumni clubs regionally in some of our major markets like New York, San Francisco. But once you graduate, you're also part of the wider MIT and institute-wide network of alumni. So we have 31,000 Sloanies out in the world, 141,000 MIT alumni all over the world. And so you have access to those networks. And internationally, where we don't have too many MIT Sloan specific clubs, we have almost 100 MIT Institute-wide clubs. And often, Sloanies are the ones who are rising to leadership position of those volunteer networks. So I think, definitely tapping into the alumni clubs across MIT, wherever you are in the world. We like to say, wherever you are in the world, there's an MIT network there for you. So that's what I would add.
Thank you for sharing, Greg.
Hey,
Marissa,
Terrell,
oh, sorry.
yeah, I was just gonna, can I just build on, I just want to
Yeah.
like give Craig's team credit where credit's due. Like my class
Yeah.
graduated in 2021 in the midst of the pandemic, and we had a lot of really creative ideas for how we could get together. And now that, after the pandemic when it was okay and safe to get together again, and every time we had an idea, we had at least two or three folks from OER like happy to hop on a call with us, figure out if there was resources, if there were people available. And it was really driven by our students and completely supported by the school. And it just was really nice to have that network ability to kind of, if you can dream it, we'll help build it kind of a scenario. And that included virtual things that, we involve students from clubs all over the country, but it also included having events in New York, having events in London. It was just a lot of it was a lot of support for the creative thinking that the alumni came up with. And I think it was nice to know that that happened even after graduation.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that perspective, Marissa. I know sometimes students are often curious about how that COVID year went and how students were able to engage within the community. And happy to see that you're still engaging post graduation as well. I'll stay with you for this next question because it does have to do with healthcare. And I know you did, I want to say, complete the healthcare certificate while you were at Sloan. So for students who know what they want to do post MBA and want to use Sloan as a testing ground, particularly in healthcare, what are some intentional ways you've seen them design their experience beyond traditional coursework and student activity? So that could be more personal, but if you have any classmates you want to highlight and what they did to kind of build their classwork.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a great opportunity to highlight our action learning approach at Sloan, where many of our classes have kind of a project-based component where you're working either with specific cases, with companies, with other alumni. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And some of those classes are healthcare focused. You know, the healthcare certificate has a healthcare action learning class, healthcare lab, but many of the other lab classes have healthcare type projects. And so that was like actually really formative for me was every time I looked at, you know, a global lab or, you know, an entrepreneurship lab or some other type of lab, I was like, well, this is Boston. There are a lot of companies that are doing life sciences that are doing these things. So what are the individual projects within those kind of courses that I can tailor to my interests and to my level? Is it working with, you know, Thermo Fisher on an operations to deliver some of their products to their life sciences companies? Is it helping kind of the biotech decision making process and really understanding what it goes into a life science venture activity and what those risks assessments are. And so, not just thinking like what are the healthcare focused classes, but what is the content that can be applied. And maybe I can speak to one specific project. One of my favorite classes I took in my second year was the innovation ecosystems class. And I wasn't particularly interested in starting my own venture or forming kind of an entrepreneurship type resume. But that class was taught by some faculty that they were really focusing on how do you build a system around innovation. And we had the opportunity to kind of dig into a certain case. And so I took, you know, I told the professors that I had one specific case. It was a final group project, and I didn't care if anyone else was going to be in my group. I really wanted to do this case. And my case study was vaccine development for COVID. I was really interested in how, you know, BioNTech, this tiny company out of Germany, came up with a solution and then but had to, you know, partner with Pfizer because they didn't have the innovative ability there in Germany and within their company. And similarly, Moderna was in the US and they were able to fundraise and triple their size and work with the US government and do everything in house. And those were two completely different models for innovation. And so I was applying the class concepts, and I ended up convincing one other student to join my project because she was, you know, just excited that I was excited. But the faculty were okay being flexible. You know, typically it's a 4 or 5 person project, but I talked to them at the beginning and was like, look, this is something I'm really interested in. And I know that there's a group component here, but is it okay if I really like run with this? And they were totally comfortable with that as long as we had that conversation to tailor the class to my interests and the research I wanted to do.
Thank you for sharing. Lawrence, I'll pass it over to you for this next question. It has to do with specifically the Sloan Fellows Program, but also your venture that you were able to launch. So, looking back at your transition after the 2024 Sloan Fellows Program, what specific resources from the Career Development Office or alumni proved most pivotal in landing your next venture/job?
Yeah, I think there was a couple of so the CDO office, career development office provided one of the things that they did is for the Sloan Fellows, and I think they did it for the 2 year programs, is they offer these set of courses on interacting with either alumni or people within the industry and how to set up, like I mentioned earlier, informational interviews, but just how to better interact with individuals so that you are getting the best responses when you need to reach out to people within the space that you want to get into after business school. And so there's the course that they offered and a couple of classes that they offered that you can take. And then there's like the actual working with an advisor in the CDO office that introduced me to alumni that had either launched their own venture fund or were in the venture fund, were working for other venture funds in the Boston area. And those introductions really helped to shape kind of like my thinking and my approach in possibly launching the in launching the venture fund. So they do it in many different ways. Thinking about a specifically how to interact with people that will help you understand how to launch the fund and then be connecting you with the right individuals one on one, meaning the CDO office individual will send an email, introduce me, and then I will connect with the alumni through that way. So yeah, they really played a major role in kind of just shaping my understanding of who's best to interact with, and then also developing my investment thesis for the fund.
Thank you for sharing. The next question I have is open to the entire panel. So, from your experience, what are some of the unwritten norms around engaging with Sloan alumni that new students often miss?
Oh, can I I have something to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
So essentially, so the first day of Sloan, one of the things that you learn very quickly is that everyone is super accomplished, and everyone has done something, and everyone is pretty humble about the things that they've done, and I think you don't necessarily need to um, sell yourself in regards to who you are to have a conversation with somebody from Sloan. I think people from Sloan value the opportunity to just either learn from somebody or to share something that helps someone else. So I would highly always recommend that, you know, as you interact with alumni or Sloanies or yeah, alumni or Sloaney, you don't need to sell your who you are to them. They're open to having these conversations.
I would add, I mean, we're often talking to students as they're approaching graduation. And so, they're often in career and job mindset. And I mentioned this earlier, but, getting out of the transactional mode. Just remember, when you join the MIT Sloan community, this is a community for a lifetime. And so it's not just about getting a job, like truly emphasize, like trying to build relationships with the other people who have come before you in this community as well. So just keeping that, again, it's a lifelong community here.
Yeah, I think one really important way to do that is to make sure to continue your alumni or community engagement goals regardless of where you are in your job search. Just kind of remember consistently, like what do you want from a network? What do you want to, what level of engagement do you want with the community? Not just when you need something, but when, for the long term, and thinking about how that means showing what that means for you and how showing up looks like, on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes it can be really hard to show up and for an event or some activity and you're thinking, well, what am I going to get out of this? But I feel like you're always happy to do it in the end. And so just giving yourself some grace to do that.
Yeah, I think doubling down on that. I think the actual community aspect, not treating everything as like a transactional relationship. Like, hey, I'm gonna reach out to this person for X, Y, Z, but I want to develop a relationship. I think relationships are the big thing around alumni community and networking. And not just like, hey, what can I get out of this? Finding ways to, like, understand that person, what they're going through, like their career journey is really important.
Awesome. Thank you all for sharing. I know we're getting close to time, but I want to kind of save time for a few more questions if possible. So this is open to everyone. So, how does the Sloan Alumni Network retain alumni engagement and that stay relevant to alumni's needs as they progress through their career journey? I think that may be a specific question for you, Greg. I'm not sure, but anybody can feel free to answer.
Yeah, I mean, there are the nitty-gritty technical things. We send surveys, we get feedback. We constantly are meeting with alumni on the road and working with our volunteers to hear feedback from alumni on the programming they would like to see, whether that's career or faculty engagement or intellectual programming. And then down to how do we change some of our traditions, like what do we do at reunions, bringing C functions in, all of those different ways that we can, keep alumni connected. So those are just some thoughts off the bat.
And the next question I have will be for those that are looking to pivot careers. So, what is the most effective way to reach out to alumni working in a sector that they're interested in?
I think one effective way is actually having a reach out on LinkedIn, having a really clear and concise message. I've seen some messages where there are essays. Hey, I have a lot going on in my personal life, in my job life, career, and seeing like something like 4 or 5 like paragraphs. Like, oh man, this is like an entire. I think just keeping like short, simple, friendly ask
Mm.
is a great way, just for like the sake of time and simplicity.